And we're back with Mr. Ernie Deaton this time. Ernie, things have changed a little, haven't they? How many years were you at Cooper and where are you at now?
38 years at Cooper Communities, and
38 years.
just had an opportunity to help to maybe use some of that experience to maybe teach some younger people a little more about the engineering profession. And so I had a customer, a company, Anderson Engineering, that is based in Springfield. That's where the home office is. I have, I think, 11 offices from everywhere from Kansas City to Destin and everywhere in between.
Now you said Springfield, which is not Springdale. So Springfield,
Correct.
Missouri, right?
Springfield, Missouri is where Anderson Engineering started as a concrete company, actually. And they actually started in the same year Cooper Communities started, 1954. But since the early 2000s, I believe they've been an ESOP, an employee-owned company. Yep. And we have now about 220 staff members company-wide, and that's grown considerably in the last 3 or 4 years.
And I didn't know when I asked, but I mean, how's the next generation? You had alluded to that. I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, well, 20 and 30 somethings have a little different way of looking at life than people of my age group.
Whatever that age group is, it shall not be discussed. We don't need to go into that, right?
It's somewhere, it's somewhere way north of 50. How's that?
It's on the back end of 50.
Since I worked at one place for 38 years, and we know I probably didn't start there when I was 10. Then it's
simple math.
Simple math. But I'm still young enough at heart to be interested in all of it and enjoy it, and especially, as I call them, teaching these kids how the old boomers did things, and they teach me things all the time too.
Are you taking your abacus in the field and showing your slide rule, or how do you do this?
What I'm really learning is that most of my examples of things, whether it's a TV show or something like that, they all look at me like, what? So when we did Diamante, we did Diamante's partnership with Bob Deadman from Club Corp. Yep. And Mr. Deadman, the way that we made that partnership was he and John Cooper Jr. were on Walmart's board together.
Oh.
And Mr. Deadman was from Risen, Arkansas, which is way down in South Arkansas. And he and H.L. Hunt, who was H.L. Hunt was the model that was used for J.R. Ewing on the TV show Dallas.
Was it now?
So that's what that character was based on, was H.L. Hunt. And of course, Mr. Deadman was his right hand. Mr. Deadman was an attorney, so he did all the land deals for Hunt and Hunt Oil, and they pumped most of the oil out of the Smackover oil field down near El Dorado, and then they moved to Dallas, and that's where they really went to work and made a lot of money. And Mr. Deadman told me one time that he decided that there was only 2 ways to get wealthy, and one of them was to marry a rich lady, and then the other one was to be an attorney for 30 years, and this was if he was an attorney, and then marry a rich woman. So he said that's when he decided to get into the golf business, was because he was never going to get rich being H.L. Hunt's attorney. So, and he became a billionaire, so he did get wealthy. Wow. Owning, Club Corp owned golf courses like Pinehurst and Barton Creek in Austin, and a bunch of courses around Dallas, Glen Haven, and then Firestone Country Club, and they had quite a portfolio. But he was an interesting old character. But when I use that analogy for the kids here about the TV show Dallas, they all look at me like we've never heard of the TV show Dallas
ever, or much less J.R. Ewing.
Exactly. So
I was going through Hot Springs Park, and I've got a little about a 40-pound Sheltie mix, black and tan, beautiful little dog. He was a sweetheart. His name was Cisco. And lady said, he's so cute. What is he? I said, well, he's a little Sheltie mix. I said, it's like a lassie you left in the dryer too long.
Mm.
And she looked
She
me
didn't know
square
what
in the eye and said, who's Lassie?
didn't know what Lassie was. Yeah. Well, that's when we know that we're getting at that age. But the Anderson engineering experience has been incredible. It's me getting to look at this business from the opposite side of being a land developer, because now that's what we do, is we work for all these land developers that I used to be one of. So I kind of bring a different, a unique perspective to our customers to the table, because basically anything they're doing, I've done it. And
you set it up initially, maybe.
yeah, and they don't find that very often in the consulting, engineering, and surveying field, that the people doing the design work for them actually understand every A to Z, from thinking about buying a piece of property to how much will we make if we do this.
Exactly.
So
Well,
it's
no, I've got to ask, is there an example you can give us? I mean, it sounds fascinating, but I mean, something that it doesn't have to be a project necessarily you worked on, but from Anderson's viewpoint, they're helping POAs, or how do they do that?
Well, no. So a company will come to, like, there's a company that approached us 2 or 3 months ago that wants to develop homes that would be luxury rental homes in Northwest Arkansas. And that's an interesting market, because there are quite a few. If you want to rent a 3-bedroom, 3-bath apartment in downtown Bentonville or Rogers right now, or even in the outskirts here around the interstate, you will pay upwards of $3,000 a month rent for a 3-bedroom, 3-bath apartment.
Really?
And if you're from San Francisco, that sounds very cheap to you.
They're like, wow, how do you get away with that? Right? That's what they're
And
thinking.
there's a lot of that in
Really?
this area. And so, one of our examples is a customer who's interested in building something to compete with that, but a single family product. And so,
Right.
since I developed residential real estate for 38 years, we have a lot of mutual understanding of how we go about doing things. So
Absolutely fascinating. For those of you joining in, let me catch up real quick. Ernie Deaton started one of your first job. Was it your first job? I mean, professionally as an engineer with Cooper?
it was, yes, directly out of college, went to work in Bella Vista, 1984, was there a year and a half, and then they decided we needed an engineer in Hot Springs Village, and that's how that connection started.
Did they move you down here full time, or what?
They did, yes, in October of 1985.
Did you think to yourself, good Lord, what have I got into?
Well, my family were all from Central Arkansas, so we were fine leaving the Great White North of Northwest Arkansas and getting back to a more reasonable climate in Central Arkansas.
God's country,
Yes,
as we call
exactly.
it, right?
Where I could actually see pine trees again.
Not just cedars, right?
Yes, exactly.
And for those of you that don't know, and once again, 5 Mile High view here, roughly over my shoulder here, from here to Russellville, maybe 45, 50 miles. And right at the 40 interchange, the 40 highway Bragg, on the other side of 40, it turns into cedar tree heck. I mean, there's cedar tree. South of that, it's pine trees. North of that, it's primarily cedars. So no, I know exactly what you're going. As someone who's highly allergic to cedars, yeah, I remember that very well. Yeah. But so they got you down here, you looked around, you said to yourself, okay, I'm the engineer. Give me a day to day. What would you be working on? What would you be doing?
Well, in 85, we had Lake Balboa was in the middle of the dam, was probably 30 feet high at that point and under construction. And that dam is, finished, is about 90 feet high. So it was a third of the way constructed. If you go on volume of material, it was about halfway constructed, but
Yeah.
because obviously those dams get narrower as they get taller. And so Lake Balboa was under construction. Balboa Golf Course was under construction. We were building and selling about 2,000 new lots a year.
A year.
A year. Yeah.
Wow. And
So
there are developments that would be thrilled if they ever sold 2,000 units, right?
right. And
Man.
we developed a community in Kansas, outside of Kansas City in Raymore, Missouri, and it's almost finished, 1,000 acres. Total finished, it'll be around 12 to 1,300 home sites. And when people talk about that and how big it is, I basically can say this is probably about the smallest thing we ever did. So
yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, and you know, you mentioned last time, and thanks again for being on with us. But I remember you mentioned last time that you had flown all over the country looking for places to have developments and so forth. And I'm just curious because the bigger places, let's face it, are going away or are gone. I cannot imagine in today's economy or today's environment building another village like this. Can you? I mean, I can't see 26,000 more acres.
Permit wise, it's impossible. Yeah, you can't. The list of things that you could no longer get a permit to do, lakes are number one.
Well, I was going to ask, you were talking about building, and I'm sorry, but I've always wanted to ask this. You were talking about building Lake Balboa, and when you came onto the scene, it was, a third done or something like that. The hydrology study for this must have taken years, did it not? I'm assuming. I mean,
and not years. I mean, we had a team, I believe there were 15 engineers working for Cooper Consultants, the engineering part of Cooper Communities, when I came to work at the company. And there were 2 or 3 of those guys that were they were very much experts in designing those dams. Mr. Gore, Jim Gore, had been with John Cooper Sr. since 1954 in Cherokee Village. And Jim Gore had designed, under his direction, they had designed all of those dams. There are several lakes in Cherokee Village. There are 7 or 8 lakes in Bella Vista. You've got 10 lakes or 12 lakes or whatever in Hot Springs Village. Most of those up until the late 1980s were all done under Jim Gore's direction.
Really?
And so
and you said being virtually impossible to get that kind of permit these days.
It's totally impossible. When I got the permit to build Creekmore Lake in Raymore, Missouri, and that would have been in about 2004, they told me at Missouri DNR, don't ever plan on building another lake like this again, because all the issues that they study in streamside mitigation credits and the inundation of areas that are not inundated, where certain species of organisms live in a creekside environment that cannot survive in a inundated lake environment. And there's enough involvement with, all of that people just say, we don't want to do this anymore.
How big was that lake, if I can, just curious?
115 acres.
You're joking.
Mm-mm.
We call those ponds.
Right.
I joke about the ponds on the East End. No disrespect, people, but ours is not a big lake. 210. Cortez is 180 or something like that, and Coronado 600, Balboa's around 1,000. But all that said, the hydrology. Anyway, so it just couldn't be built again, is what I'm hearing, right?
Just because you couldn't get the permits to build it. Correct.
For probably 23, 24 years, I've been buying and selling properties in Hot Springs Village. And probably, I bet I've had this question a dozen times. Like, well, have you had an EPA study? Mm-hmm. And I thought, do you mean for sewer or whatever? And no, they meant just an EPA study for this one lot that's already been platted and plotted. And I thought, oh my Lord, Cooper has taken care of all this decades ago. And it's not immutable in stone, but it's effectively that way. And we're working another issue that we'll discuss later, but I'm working with a land attorney, and he made note that POAs and HOAs in the whole scope of history and land law are new. They're really, really new. I mean, they're just about the last 50 years. Is that right?
I would say that's correct. I would, Cooper, what we called it in Cherokee Village in 1954 was a suburban improvement district. And then in Bella Vista, I believe they did call it a property owners association in 1965. So yeah, in the last 55, 60 years, that and the suburban improvement district in Cherokee Village, I think what they were responsible for was a little bit different. I'm not positive of this, but it seems like I recall that some of the parameters of what they were responsible for was a little different than our POAs, like you have in Hot Springs Village, and they have in Tellico and Savannah Lakes and Bella Vista, and then when you got on like to Glade Springs Village, and our West Virginia community, it got a little bit different still in what the responsibilities were
Well,
for
the
those
one at Bella
organizations.
Vista, if I'm not Bella Vista, but the one at Cherokee Village, I don't know, but about the time I was getting started, there were hundreds and even thousands of properties coming on the market because the suburban improvement district, and for what it's worth, I want to make this extremely clear. The POA is not a guaranteed entity to exist. It can fail. You can mismanage, and I think Cooper tried to put in as many guardrails as they could to try and keep well-meaning people from blowing up the ship. Is that fair enough?
Well, you guys have an interesting history over the past few years, don't you?
We do, don't we? That's a polite way to say it, Ernie. I think it is.
Is that where you were going with that?
No, I really wasn't. I knew that the suburban district in Cherokee Village, I didn't know if they failed or whatever, but it's not a done deal. It's a living, breathing organism, and it needs maintenance, and you got to keep it up, right? Or else the wheels will fall off.
Yeah. Well, I spent about a year of my life back in, what was it, around 2018, maybe 2017. Time flies. Trying to make sure that the way that Cooper had created the Hot Springs Village Property Owners Association and planned for it to exist, that way of life was maintained.
As opposed to, and let's just get it out of the room here, as opposed to being challenged by a CMP.
Well,
at that
yeah,
time.
And the idea that you could take large sections of property that Cooper had developed and made a part of the Hot Springs Village POA and just wipe them off the map basically and start over with your own development. And the financial ramifications and just the viability of and of course this isn't anybody's opinion. It's my opinion. Might totally be was definitely totally different than some of the people that were involved in that at the time, and maybe my opinion would be correct and maybe theirs, but all that we knew was it wasn't the way that we created it and promised people that it would be.
I think that's very well put, Ernie. I think that's very well put.
And
the Cooper is renowned for falling on the sword when it's their fault. I got it. I appreciate that about them. What I think people don't recognize is that it's easy to say, oh, those corporate profit squeezing, blah, blah. You know what? Cooper could have been a lot more effective on if they were just out for money. They had a different method to do. They were out to be a good business that treated people fairly and gave them what they said they offered. Is that fair?
Yes, and I can say John Cooper III and the Cooper Communities Board in that time felt a very strong responsibility to live up to what John Cooper Sr. and John Cooper Jr. and the Cooper Communities staff over the years had created, and for it to remain the way that they created it, and because promises were made to every single person who purchased a home site from Cooper Communities in Hot Springs Village.
Yep.
That this is the way that we're setting up this property owners association. Here are the responsibilities of this property owners association. And we're going to do everything that we can to ensure that what you were sold is what you get.
Well, and it's funny you should say that, because we were talking about, Randy and I were talking not too long ago about Balboa Golf Course. Now, you know, the lake is the stunner and everybody, that's a huge draw and amenity. Balboa Golf Course, I think personally, is a fantastic facility. Yes, it needs maintenance. Yes, we need to fix it up. Yes, we're working on that. But man, if you pull it out and make it stand on its own, it's kind of impressive, the building, the whole 9 yards. That said, there was a discussion, an inane discussion, of people that are low knowledge. How about that? That we would just close Balboa Golf Course because it had a big expensive building, and we could just close it and it would just make a nice meadow out behind people's houses. And I was like, it's exactly what you touched on, Ernie. People were promised things. There's going to be a golf course behind your house. There's going to be a golf pond behind your house. This is how they weren't promised. Well, you know, 20 years down the road, we may try to rezone it and just take it away and do something else with it. Am I right?
Right. And look, in hindsight, well, I mean, times change. And if you know anything about Northwest Arkansas, you know that thanks to a certain family who's very wealthy and live up here, and their foundation, that we have several hundred miles of single track mountain bike trails here now. And if you go basically to any Airbnb or Vrbo or hotel parking lot 12 months out of the year, you will see more vehicles or trailers with more mountain bikes, gravel bikes, road bikes, and though that influx, let's just say in Bella Vista alone, has created a new market for homes in Bella Vista that was, you know, not nearly as strong 5 or 10 years ago. Today, I would say you probably can't buy a house in Bella Vista for less than $150 a square foot.
Nothing.
And you can buy some in Bella Vista that are $300 or $400 a square foot, especially if they back up to one of those mountain bike trails, and a lot of them do, where you can ride right out the back door and be on an 80-mile long mountain bike trail. And so you know, there's a lot of partners in that, but the key partner is the Walton Family Foundation. And you know, those the golf courses in Bella Vista are not nearly as well used as they used to be. But the truth is that they still maintain them, and the people who live on those golf courses deserve for them to be maintained, and they deserve, in my opinion, for them to budget their POA revenue dollars to maintain the things that Cooper said. You know, there used to be a pie chart that Cooper created for each village, and this is what percentage of the pie chart is to be used for maintaining the amenities. This is the percentage that's to be used to maintain the streets, the, you know, utilities, the drainage systems. This is how much is to be used to employ the staff that's required. You know, all of those things were well thought out by Cooper Communities.
I had
long before I came along.
I had somebody tell me one time, they said, well, you know, the Cooper is still the developer and they can decree anything to the POA or whatever that they want. You know, well, why should they be able to do that? And I said, you know, when you build your own city, you'll get to do that too.
Exactly.
When you spend 50 plus years building your own city, Yeah,
Yeah.
you can do that. And it would be easy for people to say, well, they're just money grubbing, whatever. No, I loved what you said, Ernie. The promises were made.
Mhm.
Promises were made, and Cooper's still dedicated to make sure those were fulfilled. Tell us, and a few minutes that we have left here, take us back to the good old days. What was it like when you were grabbing a hard hat and blowing stuff up with dynamite? Come on, come on.
Oh, I don't know.
Granddad,
Let's
tell us what it
see.
was like. Granddad,
Yeah,
tell us what it was like.
what's a good story?
Well, you mentioned
The
earlier before we hit the button. Don't want to forget. You mentioned Demonte. Why Demonte was such a beast?
Well, Diamante was first thought up, at least the part of it. Well, we knew we were going to do more golf courses after Ponce, mainly because, and I heard John Cooper Jr. say this in a meeting at Coronado one time, where he said, you know, our salespeople were our greatest asset because they created our master plan in their minds and on their tours. And he said, when Dad and I originally dreamed up Hot Springs Village, we planned on building 2 golf courses. And at that time, I think we were on course number 6. And he said, as long as our salespeople keep promising we're going to build more golf courses, I guess we better keep building them. So,
Well,
you know,
promises were made. Promises were
yeah,
made.
exactly. We knew that Diamante was going to be the next course, and Diamante, the dream of how that happened, the way it did, and the length of it was in Augusta, Georgia, in a rental house that John Daly was renting, and I was there, and Rick Ross was there. Rick was one of the golf pros and he was John's teaching pro. He was one of the golf pro. He was the golf pro at Ponce de Leon originally, and was instrumental in John Daly showing up and doing the grand opening of Ponce de Leon 3 weeks after he won the PGA championship in
Wow,
1991. And so we went down there and hung out with John the first 3 years he played in the Masters. And the second year we were there, we were sitting at a kitchen table in a house that he was renting. And he looked at me and he said, Ernie, I want to be a golf course designer. And I said, John, you need to stick to playing golf. And
in love, this
yeah,
is not your area.
exactly. It was like, you know what? Being a great golfer does not make you a great golf course designer unless your name's Jack Nicklaus.
Did you tell him you wanted to be on the PGA Tour too, or what? Did it know?
Well, he knew that was my dream, but he knew that I didn't have the talent for it, so he didn't worry too much about that. But competition. But anyway, so what we did is we forged a relationship there where he was going to be a design consultant on the next golf course, and then we started working with Club Corp and doing Diamante's master planning. And the first thing that we thought, because John Daly was the longest hitter on the PGA Tour back in those days, and so we thought, okay, we have to design one of the longest golf courses in the United States that's not in the mountains. You know, obviously Rocky Mountain courses are so high that you can make them 9,000 yards long and the ball flies a lot further, but just for a regular typical, you know, golf course. And so we started looking into how long are golf courses, and the worst one of all was that Maumelle Country Club right there outside of Little Rock was 7,400 and some odd yards long. And that's a story in and of itself that I won't get into, but
the entire course.
The course, yeah. And so the which is incredibly, in those days, was 500 yards longer than any other golf course in the state of Arkansas. And when Maumelle was built.
Yeah.
And so what we had to do is we had to push the length of Diamante to make it longer than Maumelle, so it would be the longest golf course in the state of Arkansas. And in doing that, you know, all the par fours are at least 500 yards long, or I think there's 4 par fours that are 500 yards long from the tips, and the longest par 5 in that part of the free world, and on hole 11. And so we did all of this as part of the notoriety of this is a John Daly signature golf course. And then John went to Greensboro, North Carolina, and played the first round of the Greater Greensboro Open, shot an 81, shaved his head, and it was on all the national news that John Daly, the famous golf pro, had shaved his head because he was mad because he shot an 81 on his opening round at Greater Greensboro Open. And that was where the CEO of Cooper at the time said, okay, I like publicity, but I don't want bad publicity. And so let's not go through with this plan to, make this part of, a relationship. And so the relationship was ended, but we still were stuck with a 7,600-yard golf course. Now,
But 7,600 yards has more homes on both sides.
and you're very astute. You could have been a developer.
Salesman, probably.
Basically, every golf course that I was responsible for designing and building from that point on, we tried to see how far we could push it just to get a few more golf front lots. So you're
Really?
exactly right. Absolutely. It's like
What?
it doesn't cost that much more because all you're doing is adding from the back tee to the fairway. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, okay, but nosy question here. I told people 20 years ago that, and this sounds like an exaggeration, but you tell me. Diamante was the closest thing to a failure that Cooper did, in my opinion, because it's a gated community inside a gated community with much higher rates that, on one side of the street, I paid $500 a month. On the other side, I paid 36. And I know I'm matching oranges and apples, but I mean, I didn't understand, I guess, my point. I didn't understand why would you build a private community inside a private community, I guess.
Because at the time, every golf course that was open in Hot Springs Village was getting 60,000 rounds a year.
Every course.
Which meant whether you were playing Coronado, Cortez, DeSoto, Balboa, or Ponce de Leon, you were out there from 7:30 in the morning till dark fighting with it was packed.
So
basically every decent day it was packed. So what you could do if you bought into Diamante and became a member is you knew it was capped at 450 members.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Absolutely. And so you didn't have to worry about there being 60,000 rounds a year being played on Diamante. You were going to see 15 or 20. You were going to see a lot of days you could go out there at 2:00 in the afternoon and be the only person on the golf course.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As opposed to every other golf course in Hot Springs Village, you were playing 5.5-hour golf rounds because everybody was out there taking their sweet time playing around the golf.
Mm-hmm.
And it was packed. And there might be three groups on one hole.
Really? So it was a more premium development for one. For
absolutely. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
Was that you're paying, but do you know when Diamante's members, I think the original dues were $200 a month.
Yeah.
And at the time, the dues at let's say Pleasant Valley and Little Rock or Pinnacle up here in Northwest Arkansas were probably 3 or 4 times that.
Really?
So it was a bargain if you just agreed, I'm going to buy a lot here and a house here, and that's going to be part of, I have to pay dues, but I'm joining a golf course. I'm going to be doing this anyway.
Well, I mean,
I know people at Pinnacle here in Northwest Arkansas that have been members of Pinnacle for 25 years. So why wouldn't you do that at Diamante?
Yeah. Well, and forgive me. I mean, and I do mean forgive me. The word failure is not the correct word. It wasn't as successful as other properties, but that's it. It still was very successful, and it's still a wonderful place today.
Well, it was successful for us. For Cooper, we sold every lot we developed.
Well, so these were half-acre premiums. The courses were not Bermuda or Zoysia. What I mean,
Zoysia Fairway.
Zoysia Fairway, beautiful place. Oh my Lord, it's so funny. It just feels different when I'm looking at a lot or something on Diamante. I think you can't look at the property as an investor and not think, okay, well, here are these overhead fees for it, but at the same time, they're large, lush yards that nothing feels compressed or squeezed, and they hold beautiful homes quite well, right?
And remember, first off, you were buying a lot and a home on the number one golf course in the state of Arkansas, according to Golf Digest. and it was ranked the 4th best new course built in the United States in 1995.
See, details I didn't know. See,
Yeah.
I knew that Isabella came up, what, 2006 or something, 2004 or
Uh,
something, the one of the top five
Isabella
or
was
something.
2000 is
Yeah.
when we built Isabella, 2000.
Yeah, but I mean, like 2004, 2005, it was like one of the top five in the United States or whatever. It was rated quite highly after that too.
Yeah, they were never rated that high in the United States, but when Isabella was built, I think it was 8th best new course in the country.
Really,
By
really.
Golf Digest would rank the top courses built every year,
Mm.
and in the country, and those days there might have been 300 or 400 courses built in the United States, and so to be in the top 10 was pretty special.
Pretty much of a deal. Well, I
And
apologize,
Diamante
Ernie.
was number 4. So
Number four. Oh, I was going to ask one last question. We'll have to come back. Would you agree to see us again if you don't mind?
of course, absolutely.
We love having you on. Tell me about Granada. Is Granada the crowning achievement, or is it just another nice course, or what?
Oh, the funny thing about Granada is that I'll try to do this quickly. John Cooper Jr. walked into my office one day in the late 90s, I guess, and well, maybe it been about 2000, 2001, and he said, I've got to go tomorrow and meet with the Hot Springs Village Board of Directors, and I have no idea what could come up. And I said, John, do you want me to go? And he said, no, I want to handle it myself. And he goes, that's fine. Don't worry about it. And I said, well, don't go down there and promise them something without talking to me first, because I don't know what they're up to. I have no idea what that board is up to. And so he goes down there and he comes in the next morning, after he came back, and he said, I need to talk to you. And I said, what did you do? And he said, and this is not John the Third. Okay.
No,
This is John the Third's dad.
this is what did you do?
This is the chairman of the board. But I was brash and bold enough that I talked to him that way sometimes. I just said, what did you do? And he said, I promised him we'd build another golf course. And I said, how much did you tell him we would spend? And he said, I don't know. Can we build a course in a clubhouse for $3.5 million? And I said, I can do anything, John, but it's probably not going to be the same quality as Isabella or, Diamante. And he said, well, see what you can do. And that was Granada. And so what we did, and we had already planned on having a course there.
Yeah.
And so what we did is I got with John Paul, and John had the ability to use staff members of other golf courses. And I just said, John, you're going to get a minimal sprinkler system. You're going to get 14 bunkers on the whole golf course. I'm hopefully going to build you 18 greens, although I'm not positive I'll be able to pull off 18 greens with $3.5 million, but I'm going to try. And John goes, let me see if we can help. And so we collaborated with the POA, and they upgraded quite a few things on that golf course to make it the golf course that it was.
Well, okay. I'm leaving it on you. What is the golf course that it is?
Well, I think it's I don't believe, okay, look, Diamante is my favorite.
Really?
Period. I designed, and I was responsible for designing and building 11 golf courses with Cooper, and Diamante is still my favorite. We took that to a different level than any other course that Cooper Communities had ever built. And then the ones that came after it were also just as good. I mean, we've had US Open qualifying at Creekmore in Kansas City. The courses in West Virginia have bent grass fairways. The course at South Carolina, Monticello, had 10 of the holes were on the water and had bulkhead around the greens. We did a lot of special things, but Diamante is still my favorite. But look, Granada is an amazing golf course. Absolutely.
I think part of the views and the vistas are part of it. I think most people, and I know because you were literally involved in making it, but was it a 300-acre nature preserve just to the north of us, the Cooper Preserve?
It was about 200. I think it's about 200 acres, but yeah, that was I had planned to develop all that, and John decided to give it to the Nature Conservancy instead. So, but that was okay.
Idea. Yeah,
it was it actually was a great idea. The Cooper family always has supported the Nature Conservancy in a big way.
The Nature Conservancy and free and church land here in the village. We have plenty of churches due to the Coopers and their generosity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ernie, I've got to run. The clock has caught up with us. We will get back with you. Thanks for catching up, and thank your new employer for giving you an hour to spend with us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good to talk to you again.
Good talking to you too, Ernie.
All
Talk to
right.
you next
See
time.
ya. All right.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.